This is Grove Island, and they use this island for the repair of their boats, for the longships. And it is said that on summer nights here, if the place is ever quiet, I don't think it's ever quiet again, you can hear the sound of the blacksmith's hammer, metal on metal, from the island here. Now, you never see anything, but the sound is heard of the Viking hammer. We call him Eric the Viking, since we don't have a name for him, the ghost. But a lot of the old people down here will tell you similar stories. Now, the other interesting thing about the abbey here is that when Cromwell came here and they'd sieged the city, there were a number of silver bells in St Mary's Cathedral. Now, these bells were very valuable. They were donated by some of the bigger families, the clans in the area, and they were very prized and very valuable, as I said. So when Cromwell was about to come, they were very keen. They knew how destructive he had been in other towns and how he had massacred people, etc. They were very anxious to protect the bells. So the monks decided to bring the bells down here and put them in a secret chamber under the water. Now, unfortunately, the particular monks who knew where the bells were killed subsequently by Cromwell. So nobody knows where the bells were. But it is said that when something terrible is going to happen in Limerick, something really like when the time the mayors were murdered and the former mayor, that the bells are said to be heard from under the water here. So this is the legend of the silver bells in the Abbey River. So that's quite a long time ago. We'll move on. We'll be moving up into modern times, and I'll be talking to you about current hauntings that are occurring today. And we have had some experiences with people on the ghost walk, particularly in the milk market.
Nice.
Where we've normally carry an EMF meter with me. I've left it in the car simply because I'm not sure how appropriate it would be during daylight, but it measures electromagnetic force fields.
Wow.
And
are they expensive items then? Not
really, no. But it's just hard to get them.
Yeah.
It's not the cost. So there's a whole pile of kind of apparatus you can use. So we have had, readings showing up because it goes from sort of green to red. And in the milk market, and I've asked people to take their camera phones, or their cameras, and take photographs, and they've picked up orbs and things in the phones, and there's shrieks all around. On the other side, I'll tell you a story later on. We come to the other side of the Absolute Hotel, and a couple of young girls believe that somebody touched them from behind when we were doing the ghost walk, but there's actually quite a few stories associated with the Absolute, and I'll come to those later on. Right, let's walk on. Earlier, the whole area here was full of abbeys, monasteries, and there have been quite a number of sightings over the last, God knows so many years, of monks with cowled figures, if you like, walking through here and all along here in different parts. I know one lady claims that
what we're going to do now is
that
we're going to open it up to a big
monk
massive
actually passed through. It looked really solid, like a normal person. She tried to say father, and it actually passed through her. She got a cold shiver over her as it passed through her. So this has been a regular area for sightings. Let's move on to the next one. They've been seen on a very regular basis. Now this here, I bring you here simply because this is probably Limerick's most famous ghost. And the ghost was made famous by this man here, Michael Hogan, who was known as the Bard of Thomond's. And he lived over there. Any of you from around Thomond yet? No?
Yeah, we used to live over there.
Did you? Right, where Whelan's pub is there, that was where Hogan lived. And like a lot of the book, The Lays and Legends of Thomond, if you want to get it, it's a big thick book of poetry. It was, any of you familiar with the Cranberries? Yeah. Yeah, well, the Hogans in the Cranberries funded the book because they're they're related to this Hogan, right? This man only died in 1899, so it's not that long ago in ghost terms.
Yeah. And he haunts the place now, is
No. He tells the story in his poetry. It's a poem called Drunken Thady and the Bishop's Lady.
Yes.
Right? And it's in the Lays and Legends of Thomond. Right. This lady, we're not sure what her name is. Brady, some said she was Brady, others said Brady. But she married the bishop, and this was the bishop's house here, the bishop's palace. And within a very short space of time after marrying the bishop, she became very, very fond of the drink and gambling and various other pursuits, to the extent that she was notorious throughout the city of Limerick for bad behaviour. And it became very embarrassing for the bishop, and eventually she started saying nasty things about the bishop. And this went on throughout her lifetime, getting worse and worse. So when she died, somebody up there decided that she should come back and haunt the place, as she very well did. And the story goes that this is the area she haunted, all the streets along here, right over Thomond Bridge. And if you stayed out past midnight and walked the bridge, you were in great danger of encountering the bishop's lady. She was described as appearing out of nowhere and coming out of the ground, basically. You didn't see her coming. And she wore a red cape and a veil over her face. But when you got close to her, you noticed her eyes were actually burning like coals. And she was extremely vicious. The army who were in the barracks at the time, there was a barracks inside in the castle, were absolutely terrorised by her. The two sentries on duty in the sentry boxes, she smashed the sentry boxes to pieces and terrorised the two sentries to the extent that nobody would go on sentry duty at night. 4 soldiers coming home from the pub were encountered by the lady, and 2 of them she threw over the bridge. They died, and the other were seriously injured. So she was a huge menace in Limerick at the time. Now, at the same time, there was a man called Tady, who apparently worked for the corporation, but was notorious because he was very fond of the girls and was very fond of the drink, and was nearly barred from most of the pubs in the city. And on one Christmas Eve, Tady was down, as the poem goes, it was 3:30. The town was silent, save for a row down in the island, a pack of cards between 4 blackguards. And Tady had a great knack of causing rows, fisticuffs would ensue, and Tady would escape, and everybody else would wind up in the brawl. I mean, on one occasion, the police followed him, and he took them out to a quarry in Thomond Gate, and he was able to get his way across the water, and the police all fell in, of course, because they didn't know that the runs like Tady did. So Tady on Christmas Eve anyway was out having a ball of a time, drinking whiskey and pints of Guinness and whatever, and he came back after another row being caused. He came out to go home to his house in Thomond. And what happened then? But you were going to hit the cold air. There was a bit of snow falling. The place was deadly, very, very quiet. It's about 3:30 in the morning, and he started to proceed down here. And suddenly he started to say to himself, "The bishop's lady. You know, I'm out very late. I might encounter the bishop's lady." But then he said, "Sure, look, she's a woman. I'll deal with her." And decided to walk the middle of the road. And when he got to the centre of the bridge, up sprang the bishop's lady and grabbed him. And he thought he'd grab her, and he thought he'd kiss her actually. But he found that he was grabbing nothing, but she was able to grab him. So after a fierce struggle, she succeeded in tossing him over the bridge. And if any of you have walked Thomond Bridge,
Yeah.
on the right hand side, between the last 2 lamp posts on the bridge, you will see hand scrape marks. It's said to be Tady's nails grabbing the parapet and thrown over. So have you seen those?
Not
Oh,
really.
you've never seen those? Oh, you should go and see those. They're on the right hand side, just past halfway on the right hand side. So Teddy was tossed over, floated under the bridge. They went down to Corrigor down here where there were a number of boats, and grabbed him into the boat and stayed the night in the boat. And when the fishermen saw him in the morning, he was a very sad sight. He was wet, hungover, and very repentant. And he declared that having survived, he would never drink again, and he said he never did. Now, as for the bishop's lady, what happened to her? There are various stories. One says that a priest from St. Munchins banished her to the Red Sea, but I'm not too sure about that. Because I'll tell you, if you look at the local newspapers over the last few years, various lists have been seen coming from the cemetery. Just at sort of 6 o'clock when it got dark this time of the year, and reported by the people all working down here in what used to be the Widow's Arms houses. They're all offices now, and they've seen this apparition coming through the gate. So we're not too sure that she's actually not incarnate. I think that she might still be around and terrorising anybody or frightening the life out of anybody that might be out late. So that's the story of the bishop's lady. That's the bishop's palace. That's the graveyard that's there.
What's in there at the moment? What's inside in the bishop's palace?
It's just a restoration of what it looked like.
It's not a museum or anything.
It is of sorts, yeah.
People can go in there, yeah?
You can go in there. There's a fee, I think, to go in. And that's it. And as I said, the cemetery is worth seeing as well. As I said, Hogan made the whole thing famous. And the Lays and Legends of Thomond are the book if you want to buy the book of poetry. It's been republished. Okay, let's move on. Here, I'll give you a summary of this. You can look it up on a website if you want to, and you get the complete version. Not of the ghost story part of it, but of the actual trial of the Colleen Bawn. I believe we listened to Gary Hines on the radio this morning, and the Druid Theatre in Galway are actually doing the Colleen Bawn, which hasn't been done for a while. Who has heard of the Colleen Bawn?
Yeah. Bawn? Oh.
Yeah, a lot of people think, because the Kerry, any of you here from Kerry, no?
No.
Any of your relations from Kerry? No, but they're very opportunistic, the Kerry people. If they hear a good idea or see a good idea, they'll steal it. And the Colleen Bawn story, Colleen Bawn was murdered in the Shannon Estuary. And Kerry people took it, transposed it to Killarney. They were very, very clever about that. And the people in Limerick never capitalised it, because it's a fantastic story. You could make a film out of it. And I'll tell it to you very briefly, because I want to get to the part of the haunting. This is a true story, as you can read about it. The Colleen Bawn, she was very beautiful. She was about 16 years of age, and she lived in County Limerick. She lived with her uncle, who doted on her. A very unscrupulous man called Scanlon inveigled her into marrying him. He also kept his options open because he used a defrocked priest to carry out the ceremony, thinking that the marriage would be invalid. The marriage was found to be valid. In the meantime, his sister had found him another woman with lots of money to marry, so he wanted to get rid of the Colleen Bawn. So he had his manservant, or his half-brother actually, murder her down the Shannon Estuary. Her body was eventually found tied in ropes, with her teeth broken, and she was very badly disfigured. So and I've just cut that very quickly. It's a very good story about the rope maker and everything else, but I won't go into here. It will take too long. But the trial of O'Sullivan and Scanlon, the two guys involved in the murder, was held inside here. And have you heard of Daniel O'Connell?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, Daniel O'Connell was a lawyer, as you know, and because Scanlon's family were very rich, and the Colleen Bawn's family were very poor, people were afraid that they wouldn't get a fair trial because Scanlon's family had hired the best lawyer in the country to defend him. So, in brief, he was found guilty, and they decided to hang him in the Fair Green. You'll hear some accounts saying on the Clare side it wasn't. It was the Fair Green up Ballysimon Road, and that's where the hanging was to be carried out. But here's the rub. when the horses, in those days, this was before the police. They had the army did most of the police work, and when they got him to Ball's Bridge down there, the horses wouldn't cross the bridge, refused point blank. The army came up, and this is on record. This is all in the newspapers. They tried to stick bayonets, jab the horses to get the horses to cross the bridge. They wouldn't cross the bridge. And the small children started to say, "Mammy, what's that lady doing on the bridge?" And what the children saw, and obviously the horses saw as well, was this beautiful young girl dripping with water standing on the bridge. She wanted to make sure that justice was done.
Yeah.
But the adults couldn't see it, and the horses and the children. So the horses wouldn't cross the bridge, regardless of what was done to them. So Scanlon was taken from the cart. The way they used to take the horses had like a cart with a prison thing on it. And he was taken and walked to his place of execution, where he was duly hanged. But the account of the horses not crossing the bridge, the whole trial, is all on record.
It's amazing, isn't it?
And it's that is a story that I could take an hour and a half to tell, because it is a really, really
Sounds
interesting.
fascinating. Is there anywhere where it's
It's on websites, but I'm saying to you, there's some inaccuracies. Now I've done a lot of research on it, and most of it is true, but some small little inaccuracies. You'll see that some of them contradict one another.
Yeah.
But it did happen. There was a trial. The names are correct. There's some little doubts about, for example, were they married in Dublin or were they married in Limerick City, things like that.
Yeah, yeah.
But the fact that they were married, and there was a defrocked priest that carried out the ceremony, intentionally, by the way, by Scanlon, so that they'd get out of the marriage. Also robbed the uncle's dowry, into the whole pile of things, and how he had made it away with a dog out hunting, and it's a fascinating story. Yeah. Philip.
Yeah.
Colleen Ball. Now, something that they put into the wall. It's not that somebody came along and chiseled those in. You can see that the stones are prominent.
Yeah.
So they were set in that way after things. It's the story of two brothers, apparently, who were farmers in County Limerick, and one of them, they farmed, the land, the farm was owned jointly by them, and they farmed it like that, and one of them decided he was going to sell off his hand to the farm. So they came in, by the way, to book the passage to America, and one of them was locked in a chamber down here until the showroom, and sealed up, and some of the neighbours knew about it, had these stones put in, not knowing that it was actually down here that one of the brothers was kept. Now, here's the interesting thing. There is a door, a passageway at the back of this little shop, and there are steps down that goes down here, and I'll show you in a moment. And at the moment, the guy that does this with me, the ghost walk, his job, because he also does some work, not with search and rescue, but the other people that talk to them, trying to prevent people from committing suicide. Yeah. They have to. They've been asked to knock the hole in the wall to see what's down there. So I'll be very interested to know what is actually down there when we get there. But look, I'll show you from here. See the little slits in the wall.
Yes, where do you want?
You can see the little slits in the wall.
Apparently he is located somewhere down here.
Yeah, on the floor there. And there's slits there in the wall, they were for ventilation.
And when did you say he was captured again, or imprisoned?
No, because we was going off to set off half the farm, and the other guy didn't want him, so he held him here.
Oh, kind of prisoner.
Yeah.
So he's in a chamber.
Did he die in there, or?
We don't know. We don't know. was suspected by the neighbours that something ill had become of him.
And was this a house, or what was it at the time?
I don't know. It was some kind of that seems to be in some kind of a house for quite a long time. Some kind of a building.
Right.
But I know that some of the ships, not the big ships, but some of the smaller ones, would have tied up here. And I'll show you back here, if any of you want to see it. Whatever that was originally was used for discharging, loading and unloading underneath it. And then it was sealed up. Can you see this here? This is for tying. This is the end of a rope, like an anchor. It's stuck here. It would hold it down there.
Okay. So what's the story? So the faces on these
what
rocks
we're
were then
what
made?
we're saying was, yeah.
Or
somebody,
was it just
they were made and put in there to symbolise the two farmers. And it was also a message to the guy that had imprisoned his brother. But they didn't know he was in prison at the time. But apparently this must have had some connection with disembarking for America. I don't know. But we'll find out when we open the chamber.
Yeah, of course. It's going to be interesting.
And like everything else, there's loads of little secrets in the city that, haven't been uncovered yet. Even if we do, we might necessarily know.
Remember the time that we were doing William Street?
Yeah.
All the bicycles underneath the street.
Yeah, wouldn't surprise me. You could find anything.
Full of bicycles.
I know that the IRA in the 1920s, Vienna Air used to steal bicycles from the RIC and repaint them. You know that? Oh, yeah, so that's the possible explanation. Because like a lot of stuff was hidden on the streets,
sure.
In coffins.
Oh my God.
Right. You can imagine how atmospheric this is in the dark.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Now, the first one I'm going to tell you, this lady here, her name is Lily White.
Really white.
She was from Kuna direction, Sandrina, Kuna.
Yeah.
And she was 96 in the photograph. She used to come in here and sell her vegetables. Set up very early in the morning with all the other stall holders. This is now before there was even a roof on the place. And sell all her groceries. Now, for about 3 weeks, some of the other stall holders were saying, Lily is very quiet, she's not talking to us at all. And they were really, really surprised when they found out that Lily had died 3 weeks before. And her ghost was showing up there in the morning. Some of the stall holders here will tell you this, the story. Her ghost was still turning up as she always did, selling her vegetables, or setting up her vegetables. So,
They said she wasn't looking well.
we only found out 3 weeks later that she had died.
It must have been pretty weird if you bought something off her.
It's pretty weird. This the story I'm going to tell you is not about somebody dead. He's still very much alive. And the man's name is Arthur Corbin. There's a shop nearby called KK, but it's his wife. Now, Arthur owned this some years back. This was a restaurant. This is now where the manager of the milk market, he's upstairs, and this was built. All these markets were fields around the city. There was 14 of them at one stage around the city selling various things. But because people were being sold chicken that was gone off and bad eggs, they brought in the equivalent of our health inspectors, and they started regulating the whole thing. And this was built at one point for the people that regulated the markets. Now a lot of the markets have closed in Limerick. This one is still open. The potato market is still there, but not as a market. So Arthur Cable opened a restaurant here. Now the layout was slightly different. This was the kitchen in here, this place behind you, and dining area was here. Now what Arthur thought was strange, and he'll tell you the story himself, was when he used to leave in the evening, it was only open during the day, when he'd leave in the evening, he'd lock up the shop. And when he'd come back in the morning, he used to have difficulty getting in, because all the tables and chairs were stacked against the door. He thought somebody's taking, somebody's having a bit of fun with me. So he set up various little traps with hairs across the door to see sure nobody was going in. He thought somebody was spare key. Didn't make any difference. Every morning, and he told his wife, she said, Arthur, you're losing it. And so he stopped telling people. But this went on all the time. Whatever was in there didn't like him being there. And he was delighted when I started doing this little tour, because he was able to tell me, and he said, at last somebody believes me. But strange enough, and you were talking about Limerick, finding it difficult to find. I have a theory. I reckon that if you say that you've seen something in Limerick, people laugh at you. Another place to take you more seriously.
Yeah.
And but I'll tell you a good one. This store has been for rent for years. Nobody will take it. Anybody that has taken it, get out of it very quickly, and they never say why. So it makes you think about the attitude we have in Limerick to, we just put up
Superstition as well.
Well, obviously something's going on.
I mean, I just went.
When was it open?
Probably not.
Did you stay the night there?
Yeah, I'd stay the night there.
Did you?
I'd say Robert
I'll be gone if it isn't.
And we'll go back down again. We'll go over the weekend. But down to the main gate.
It is locked.
There was a break in here about 2 years ago. Somebody broke into the market, and the guards came and they looked at the CCTV. And when they examined the CCTV, they found pictures of orbs. Orbs are concentrated forms of energy. They're often associated with ghosts. Have I got a photograph here? Don't, but they're on YouTube. If any of you want to look it up, and there was a lot of orb activity seen beside the gate. Now the lady that reads fortunes here is a psychic, and she reckons it was to do with a hanging, which quite possibly it is, and somebody taking the blame for somebody else and being hanged here. But definitely, the night we were here, we didn't see anything, but the minute they started taking photographs with their cameras, they saw all these little balls of light flying around. So there's a lot of things go on in this market. And
You seeing guys?
No.
No, it's locked.
Is it all locked up?
Yeah.
what is very interesting is that the officer up there, the man that he says he won't stay for 2 days. He just says he doesn't feel it. The security company that looked after it, the head of the security company spent the night here saying, Solomon, I swear he didn't never when you're getting something so terrified. Didn't see anything, but he got awful sensations. So there are things going on here. Anybody know what was happening back in 1919 in Limerick?
No.
1919. It was one of the rebellions, wasn't it?
Yeah, Civil War, the War of Independence was going on. At that stage, there was what they call the Soviet in Limerick. The people in Limerick, the business people, the workers in Limerick, the clergy all got together, and they printed their own money and ran the city themselves and cut out the British establishment. Okay? But in retaliation, the British brought in a curfew into the city. And do you know what a curfew is?
No.
Time that you had to spend out at.
That's right. People had to be, businesses had to be closed down by 2 o'clock in the afternoon. All business had to shut down. And everybody had to be indoors by 4 o'clock. And you couldn't go out after that. At best, they would arrest you. At worst, they would shoot you. So, there was a family down here who had a sick relative, mother or father, in another part of the city. And they needed to go off and look after the parent.
Yeah.
And they had children, and they couldn't take the children. They were afraid the children would stick up something.
Yeah.
So they recruited, they got the assistance of 2 girls from the island road called Kathleen and Eileen Hagerty. Kathleen and Eileen came across and stayed in the house, and they did all the things you would do with kids. They played games with them, they fed them, you know, they did all the things. And when the time came this was April now, 1919, when the time came to put them into bed, they put the children into bed. And they themselves stayed up for a while. But they noticed as the evening went on, it got colder and colder in the house, to the extent that they were so cold, even though they had a fire on in April, and it was bad outside, they got under the bedclothes and to try and heat themselves.
Yeah.
So sometime after midnight, they started to feel extremely cold, and they started to feel ill. It was like a terrible smell.
Yeah.
And they started to feel sickly. And eventually, before dawn, they saw all these people walking through the room, ghostly figures, and they all had very sunken eyes and sunken jaws. And they didn't take too much notice. Now, why didn't they run out of the house, did you? If they ran out, they could have been shot. Right? So, they told their mother and father when they got home. Now, these were 15, 16-year-olds. Told their mother and father when they got home about what they'd seen.
They laughed.
And they laughed and said, look, for God's sake, there's worse things going on. The Black and Tans are shooting people and whatever. So don't be bothering us, basically, right? So that story stayed on, and there were similar stories being told. But for example, when Barrington's built, the building on the corner was a hostel, Barrington's Hostel, where often nurses would have stayed. And when there was renovations going on there, again, some of the tradesmen saw these figures walking through the rooms. Very ghostly figures, sunken. And, there's no explanation for this. Until in 2005, not too long ago, an excavation was carried out by Aegis Archaeology. They're based there in Nicholas Street. And their job was to see, was there anything under the Absolute Hotel, the Grail Skull, and the whole area was being excavated by the archaeologists. And they found 96 bodies here. Now the bodies were, the city wall is just behind us, so they were between the river wall and the city wall. And they can't actually date the bodies. I think they might be from the 1400s, sometimes the 1700s. But they were obviously, from examination, victims of cholera. Right? Now, when you take the description of these 2 young teenagers, cholera victims have sunken jaws, sunken eyes. So it's the procession of people coming through the rooms over there and over here were obviously the cholera victims. Now, I phoned Aegis because you were asking me, who's asking me? One of you were asking me about research.
Really?
Yeah, I tried to check out when it's possible to check out. 2005 isn't long ago, so I was able to check with Aegis Archaeology, and I said, well, what did you do with the bodies? Where did you reinter them? They said, well, we didn't. We left them where they are. So you have 96 bodies under your feet there, ladies and gentlemen. So, what effect has that had? I was telling the story to a group here one evening, And one of the fellas on the group said, I know all about that. I thought he was being smart. I said, how do you mean? He said, my uncle was involved in the dig. And I said, yeah. He said, yeah, he said, and he left his glasses or his phone, we don't know which, after him down here. And he came back late at night to pick up his glasses and his phone, and he didn't return home for a fortnight. We found him eventually like that in a pub, he said, and he wouldn't talk about it, he wouldn't tell us what he'd seen. But obviously he had some awful experience back down here.
Yeah.
And as I said, the stories go on. As a young lad, well, he's not young, he's a young man called Kieran Murray, and he claims to have seen exactly the same type of thing across the road here. So I suspect, well, I know that the main part of the 96 bodies was here.
Under the Gael Closh then.
I wonder who goes in there at night.
Yeah, I'm wondering who's learning there.
So history and ghostly stories are under your feet.
That's shocking.
The maintenance man inside, I think he's German or Dutch or something inside in the hotel. He kind of, he's obviously had some experience as well. We won't talk about them.
People are too proud, you see.
Well, I think people are afraid that you might be laughed at
Yeah.
if they say they've seen something, you know.
Yeah.
But other places people are delighted to talk about. In Limerick, for some reason, they want to hush it up.
Yeah, I think that's what's going on. Maybe it's the ghost in action.
Okay, I hope you enjoy that.
Thank you, Fergus.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
fabulous.
And if you come again, it'll be